and welcome to Bookaholic. This is Deirdre Pippins, your one true and only bookaholic. Hi, today we've got a special guest. We've got Robin Whitten, who is the founder and editor of AudioFile Magazine. She's going to enlighten us about audiobooks. They do reviews of audiobooks. Who knew? I didn't. And I didn't even think of it. I just thought a book was a book, even though it was on audio book, but just still a book. And I thought the book review itself would suffice, but we're leaving out a special element, the voice that carries the story. So Robin is here to talk all about audiobooks and AudioFile Magazine. In the meantime, if you're listening to this as a podcast, make sure you download and follow me on Google, Spotify, Apple, or anywhere else you may listen to your podcast. If you're looking and listening on YouTube, make sure you click that subscribe button to my YouTube channel and click that bell, because every time I send up a video, it'll notify you that I'm doing it. And don't worry, we'll have all the information running at the bottom of the screen throughout this interview of how you can reach out and contact me and subscribe and support me, and AudioFile Magazine as well. So thank you very much for listening, and we'll jump right into it after this. Hello, Robin.
Hello, Deirdre.
How's it going?
It's a great day.
Yes, it's very sunny where I'm at, very warm. I'm wishing it would be a little bit cooler because I do love that fall cool weather, because I think it's ideal for reading and listening to books.
I agree. I agree. And I'm in Maine, so we have a lot of cool weather, and but we're having a beautiful fall day that's, sunny and bright, and the colors are beautiful. So
wow, wonderful. The colors haven't hit here yet, so we're still waiting.
We're moving them south.
Right into it. Well, like I described to the audience, that you are not only an editor, you are the founder of AudioFile Magazine. How did you come up with this concept?
Well, the idea for AudioFile, which sort of was born over 30 years ago, was a bit from a conversation with my library director, who was an audiobook listener, as I was just discovering audiobooks. And he was telling me how the library was beginning to collect audiobooks. This is 1990 about. And of course, they were cassettes. So it was the dark ages here. Yes. But what we talked about was that libraries were purchasing audiobooks based on the book review, so the review of the book, and with very little information that was ever being given about the performance and the narrator, the voice. And so we just talked about how that makes all the difference in listening to a book, what, the creative choices that the narrator makes, all of that. And, so at that point, it was like desktop publishing 101. You could make a newsletter. And so I said, I can do this. This is an idea for talking about audiobooks and helping people find what's good and interesting to listen to.
Right. Wow. And when you said 30 years ago, it was like, wow, really? This is kind of like my mind went boom, I didn't even realize audiobooks had been around that long. It still seems new to me. I wonder why that is. Why does it still feel new?
Well, I think because the technology has made such leaps in 30
Yeah.
years from
Yeah.
all those little cassettes, which, now you can't even find a player for them if you have them. The sound is terrible, all kinds of things. But people, that's the way they were first introduced to audiobooks. And then with CDs, which were better, but because certainly the sound was always better, but you kind of had to deal with the discs. And then, by the time in the early, really, I think just after 2000, when we started to have digital downloads, so that digital files that you could have in phones. Now, no one even thinks of it. That's the way audiobooks come, and they go everywhere where you go with your phone.
Correct. There's a funny commercial. I can't even remember the brand, where a man is jogging with an old time Walkman. Yeah. And he's got the Walkman, and can you imagine somebody trying to listen to a story on that? But thank goodness technology has taken the audiobooks to this type of level. Right. Now, Robin, as I discussed with you in an earlier conversation, I'm a hardcore reader. I'm one of those people that like to hold the book, to hug the book, to smell the book, crack that bind. I am a hardcore book reader. Convince me and other people like me to listen to audiobooks. Also, full disclosure, I feel like I'll be a little distracted if I can't sit down and really listen, or I might even fall asleep. So how can I get through that and maybe listen to some of my books on audiobook?
Well, the first thing, if I'm going to convince you, I need to know a little bit about the kind of books that you like to read. Okay. So we start right there with what you already like to read. And now I can, if you tell me a couple things maybe that you're very excited about recently, then I'll start with that.
Okay, so historical fiction is my jam. Mm-hmm. All right, and right now I'm also a what were they calling it? I read about 5 books at the same time. Okay, so because it's October, I'm reading a thriller, but I also have the love songs of W.E.B. Du Bois that I'm reading, which is about 800 pages. So that's historical fiction. So those are the 2 that say I'm reading right now.
Okay. So what's the thriller that you're listening to?
It's called When No One Is Watching. I think that's the title, When No One Is Watching. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the couple things with historical fiction, sometime, and not just historical fiction, but in fiction where there's a setting in the South, for example.
Yes.
And there are conversations between people who have accents. Okay. Or even like a dialect or a speech pattern that is written down, it's written. So I think of like Zora Neale Hurston. And, her, that's a great example because Ruby Dee read the audiobook of Their Eyes Were Watching God.
Oh, wow.
And so it's written in dialect, and, I can hear dialect and understand it, but I'm not sure that as a sight reader of every of the text that I hear it. And what happens to me when I'm reading is I get stuck. I'm like, what's happened? I'm not sure I understand that sentence. So I never hear the kind of musicality that that if I wasn't, I would hear it in someone speaking that way, which is what a dialogue is, and when it's written in dialect.
Yes. So, yes, I can, when you said that, I thought immediately of the Gullah Geechee language. If you're a person who's not from the South, and specifically from the coast of South Carolina and Georgia, you're totally unfamiliar with the Gullah and Geechee dialect and even the people. And so when you see that written in a historical fiction, it's hard to, you read it, but you don't have the cadence.
Right.
You don't have the true sound of it. So I can see where you're coming from. That's a great example when you talked about the Southern fiction, because it picked up and
Right.
brought me to that. Yes, I can understand that totally.
And of course, when you're in historical fiction, in say that's maybe set in England or anywhere in the UK, you have all of the regional dialects and accents that are very important to understanding the class of the people that are speaking. So if you're not, and it might not be written in dialect in that case, so there's no clue, every word looks the same. But if you've got a Scot and you've got someone from Southern England, they say that word totally differently.
Correct.
Now the author knows that.
Yes.
Right? But as a reader, do I know that? I mean, I maybe, if I'm really good and I'm really paying attention, then I know that. But in an audiobook, all of that important pieces that the author has put in of, what the class of the person who's speaking, what the emotion, oftentimes the emotion of the person who's speaking. That's another thing that's very important that comes across in an audiobook.
Yes, very good point. Just got finished reading The Hunting Party by, Lucy Foley, I think is her name. And of course, the people coming to visit were from London, and they were going to a space in, I think it was in Scotland, maybe. But I didn't read that with the British dialogue in my mind. I just read straight through in my form of English. And I didn't put that in there, but I can see how that would be an even more great story when you hear the dialects and that. And that's piquing my curiosity to say, you know what, I would really love to hear that. I'm sure that would paint a whole different picture to the story and to the concept of the story. Now, at one time, I wanted to be a voiceover professional.
Well, you are. But
thank you. But, then it seemed like all of a sudden celebrities were doing all the voiceovers on all the Disney movies and on commercials and all kinds of, and the audiobooks. But you, on your website, you have a list of your beautiful golden voices, I believe you call it, as it were. And so it puts a spotlight on the people that's doing the hard job with the audiobooks. They get their chance to shine, whereas the people that write the books are always the stars in one case. But people should start paying attention to these golden voices. Tell me a little bit about some of them.
Well, I think what's exciting about, as a listener, oftentimes you may not, you are enjoying the whole story and the experience, the listening experience, but just like you might not know the name of an actor that you have seen in a film or something like that, as you get more interested and you get more interested in that person, you start to recognize their face, their voice, the style of their acting. So in audiobooks, it's very much the same. And you're right that there are celebrities who are doing audiobooks from time to time. That's great for people who recognize that celebrity and maybe want to listen to that person read an audiobook. But really the working actors who, as I say, always make the magic for you as a listener, are, really working in their studios, around the country, around the world, really. And that's one of the things that AudioFile really feels strongly about is it's the artistic choices that, say, Simon Vance may make, or the artistic choices that Julia Whalen makes in any one of her audiobooks. And it can be different. I mean, there are so many choices, but their choices are excellent. They respond to what the author has written. You know, they have a great range of being able to be skilled with dialect and character voices and all of that sort of thing. They make great creative choices, and so they make our experience, our listening experience, great. They're they're skilled. They have experience with children's books, historical fiction, mysteries, and you might recognize it's the same voice, but I think they are, particularly our golden voices, are always responsive to exactly the story they're telling, that one specific story. Yeah.
Right. Now, I can understand how, say, someone reading a memoir or a biography would be one voice. But of course, you have multi characters in books. So, how do you handle that? Does the person change their voice for different characters, or do you have to do a multi, or how does that work?
Well, you have as a listener, you have choices of all of those things. I mean, many of the audiobooks are done with a single voice. I mean, a great example of that is Harry Potter. All of the Harry Potter titles were done by Jim Dale, who is one man, but there are hundreds of voices and characters that he does through all of those books.
Wow.
And so it might as well have been a full cast. It wasn't. It's just one guy who is brilliant. One of our golden voices. And, and then also you can find multicast stories that are produced. It might be an adaptation. I mean, one of the things, if you like science fiction, Neil Gaiman has a spectacular new story that's based on the Sandman.
Wow.
And that's a full cast with all kinds of really amazing, some celebrities, a lot of really great actors. You can have everything. There's also, I'm thinking, what we call an ensemble performance, which might be a group of actors who are not actually interacting. So they're not actually speaking to each other. It's like one point of view from the father, and then in the next chapter there's a point of view of the mother. Those might be a different actor. And so you're hearing the different points of view read by different actors, narrators.
Yes, I can understand that. That brings back to me the Lucy Foley books. She writes like that. A character and their point of view, and then another character's the next chapter. She does that in the two books that I've read of hers, The Guest List and The Hunting Party. She does that. Yes. Okay. So yes, I can understand that. Now let's talk a little bit about your reviewers. So your reviewers, of course, not only review the book, but they review the voice. Tell me a little bit about that process.
So we all our reviewers, we have maybe almost 100 different people reviewing, so lots of different points of view, and but they all have the same sort of charge in that we are reviewing the audiobook. So we want to make sure that each review talks about the listening experience, who the narrators are, whether they're doing a great job, whether they're connecting with you as a listener, whether the casting, seemed perfect or a little off, or there are, many things, but it's about trying to explain enough about what to expect. So we're recommending it. Why am I recommending it as an audiobook? It is because the character voices are so great, or the emotional connection that the narrator has to each each one of the characters is so clear. Something like that. We talk about it. They're very short. You know, but we're either trying to say this is great, go ahead and listen, or you know, maybe you want to read that in print.
Well, I listened to one of your podcasts.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yes, and it was very informative. It was a few weeks ago. I can't remember all the details about it right now, but it was just very clear about the banter between both people, talking about the book. It was very clear. So it's definitely helpful to go on audiofilemagazine.com to listen to some of your podcast reviews. Definitely.
Right.
Now, I see you have up there. Now, let's take a book that's making the book rounds, Cloud Cuckoo Land.
Yes.
So that's everywhere. I think it's even made a bunch of lists. It's a finalist in, you know, a bunch of different lists. And I think the man only wrote All the Light We Cannot See. That was his first book, right? And so what's making that so special as a book and an audiobook, because it's profiled on your website?
Well, let's see. It's Marin, Ireland, and Simon Jones are the two narrators.
Okay.
And Simon Jones is one of my favorite actors. He is a golden voice, so he's had a lifetime of experience on Broadway, on, you know, and you know, audiobooks for many decades. And Marin, Ireland, who is an extremely talented actress and narrator who's recently won awards for her audiobooks. So I think it's two narrators who brilliantly connect with this story. They get all the subtleties of it. They respond to the characters. They present those characters sort of fully formed. And I think it's because it's two voices that's exciting. And of course, the book is getting a ton of attention.
Yes, most definitely. And I think it's another huge tome like the Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois. It's about 600 pages, I think, maybe, and it covers maybe 8 centuries or something like that.
Right.
And he dedicated it to librarians. So I don't know if I can read back-to-back tomes, but I'm certainly have to get my hands on that.
Maybe this is the one you need to listen to. You
maybe
see, that'll
it
be.
Is. Maybe it is. You know, this is true. So yeah, you know, so I noticed that audiobooks tell you how many hours that it will take. Do you remember off the top of your head how many hours for the
I don't off the top of my head how many hours the Cloud Cuckoo Land is.
Yeah.
But maybe I can look it up while we're talking. But I think one of the things you were asking about, you know, you're afraid it might put you to sleep.
Yeah.
You're afraid you might not, you know, but think about the time when you're, I don't know, doing errands or stuck in traffic somewhere or out for a walk. You know, taking the dog out, you know, doing chores. I mean, people often, I like vacuuming, and doing, listening to audiobooks. I love to garden and listen to audiobooks.
Yeah.
I mean, there are lots of opportunities.
Right. I can see that. Yeah. Because I was still taking that sitting down in a chair, still with that book, but you don't have to do that. That does give you more opportunities and a lot of more reading opportunities that way.
And also, I think there are a lot of people who are knitters and crafters. When you're doing, I mean, there are all kinds of things where maybe your hands are busy or you have to be occupied, but not actually being occupied with your mind and what you're thinking about. And you can listen. Now it's hard. I find it always hard to watch TV and knit, because if either one of them is too interesting, then I'm, you know, I'm gonna make mistakes, but with if you've got an audiobook on, you're all set.
Yes, that's a very good point. I think I just read that recently of someone, and I can't remember who the woman was or where I read it, but she was like, I listen to audiobooks, excuse me, while I'm knitting. So I'm like, okay, I'll have to. I picked up some crafting, some cross stitch.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll try it then.
Absolutely. That's a great thing. Or big chores like painting a room, if you're doing some decorating and you're painting, things that go on and on, you have to pay attention, but a little entertainment wouldn't hurt.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm going to start trying to merge my way over into actually thinking about that, because I do have a lot of upcoming projects for Christmas and all of this where I could listen to an audiobook instead of just having the TV running in the background. So yeah, I think I'll definitely give that a try. Now, let me ask you, this may be hard. Here we go. What are your top 3 audiobooks of all time and why?
Okay. Number 1.
Okay.
Number 1, I got them ready. Number 1, The Golden Compass by Philip Pullman.
Okay.
So that is the story, the fantasy that was written, I don't know, maybe over 20 years ago almost. It is a full cast, so it's dozens of actors. And it was just brilliantly done the way it was recorded, with amazing characters, and the author Philip Pullman took the role of the narrator within the story, which is very interesting.
Okay.
I mean, I could go on talking about these are my favorite all-time audiobooks.
Please, I want you to dive right in.
And the story is fantastic. And what is quite interesting, I think, people might be familiar with either the original text, the series, but it's also been made into recent the HBO series, His Dark Materials.
Oh,
that's based on the original trilogy by Philip Pullman. And so it's a very dynamic story. And then it kind of, the other thing that's interesting about it is several were done with full cast, and now in his series, it's actually in the prequels, there are single voice narrations of the story by I'm just blanking. Michael Sheen.
Okay.
The British actor. So, that's a whole different thing. Anyway, that's number 1.
That's the Golden Compass.
Yes, right. By Philip Pullman. Right.
Okay. All right. Number 2.
And then the second one I would say is The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman.
Okay.
Which is not also new. I'm listening a lot, but still these are we were saying all-time favorites. So the version that I particularly like is read by the author, which is not always successful. But Neil is an amazing, not only is he an amazing storyteller, written storyteller, but storyteller as a voice. He makes that story unbelievably dynamic in a way that fully represents his written work, I think.
Wow.
And are you familiar with The Graveyard Book?
No, I am not. I'm not familiar with the first one, and so this is intriguing that I probably will check these out.
Yes. So The Graveyard Book really was written as sort of a middle grade children's book, but it's sort of based on the Jungle books. So it's about a little boy who is raised in a graveyard by the ghosts.
Oh my gosh.
And I mean, that's
perfect for October.
It is. It's pretty perfect.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
So there's that, and
number 3.
Oh gosh. Well, no, I'm gonna kind of jump forward and just because there's I have often it's love the one you're with. So not the absolutely most recent book, but one of the most recent books that I've really enjoyed was Louise Penny's new The Madness of Crowds, which is read by Robert Bathurst, who is an English actor.
Okay. Refresh my memory about that book. What's the backstory?
So The Madness of Crowds is it's in the Armand Gamache series, which is he's a police inspector in Quebec. And some of the stories are not all set there, but they're set in a fictional town called Three Pines. And there are all these quirky characters who live in Three Pines. And then, of course, there's there's crimes that have to be solved. But the interesting thing about that with Gamache as a character and all of his family and his co-workers and these characters that live in Three Pines. I mean, it's a long-running series, more than a dozen of them at least.
Okay. And I saw recently where she's writing a book with Hillary Clinton. I was like, wow. I guess when you get in another echelon, you can be Secretary of State, you can be a book writing fiction, you can just do whatever you want to do. People just hire you for anything. Wow.
I guess so.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Robin, it has been fantastic talking to you about audiobooks, and you really have opened up my mind to audiobooks. Your website, audiofilemagazine.com, is a tremendous resource. There's not only reviews for the audiobooks and the golden voices, but you all have so much other things on your website that is valuable to all readers, whether you prefer books or audiobooks or can balance both. It's a huge resource. So I love looking at it, and I now have it bookmarked on my computer.
Oh, thank you, Deirdre. That's great, because it is fun. We're just trying to help people find the next great audiobook to listen to.
Exactly. So now tell us your social media handles where people can find you also.
So it's AudioFile Mag is our Twitter, and also our Facebook. And of course we have the 2 podcasts.
Yes.
And Behind the Mic with AudioFile Magazine, which is the short podcast where we discuss one audiobook recommending every day.
Right.
And then the Audiobook Break, which is a classic audiobook actually that's been serialized into a podcast. So it's chapter by chapter. So you can listen, a couple days a week and get through. That's another way to get through an audiobook. Right now, we are featuring the Iliad. So when you go back to the original kind of audiobooks, things that we listened to originally, so that's what is on Audiobook Break for this fall.
Wow. That's fantastic. So I really appreciate that. And do you have do you have an Instagram?
We don't have an Instagram, but we do have a YouTube channel that is AudioFile Magazine, and it is we have wonderful little videos with the narrators talking about the audiobook that they've just recorded. So that's sort of fun. So you can actually hear what the narrator says about doing recording that book.
Got it. Well, that's wonderful. Like I said, it's a tremendous resource, and I love everything you guys are doing out there. So, Robin, I just want to say thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And folks, head on over to audiofilemagazine.com. Thanks, Robin.
Thank you. It was great fun.
Thank you. Okay, everyone, what a great day we had with Robin Whitten, who is the editor and founder of AudioFileMagazine.com. Head on over there and to their social media and make sure, like I said before, if you're listening to this as a podcast, make sure you download and follow me on Google, Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you listen to your podcast. I also have a wonderful and informative website, bookaholic.com. That's book-a-holic.com. And follow me on my social media. I am True Bookaholic on Instagram and Facebook, and True Bookaholic 1 on Twitter. And I also have this newly minted YouTube channel. Follow me there as well. And make sure you subscribe and click that bell so that you will be notified every time I send up a video. Okay, thank you so much for watching and listening, and I'll see you next time.